On September 11, 2001, nearly 3,000 people, including a colleague of mine, Bill Weems, were killed in the largest foreign attack ever on American soil. The targets were the financial and military headquarters of the United States.
If anyone has any idea, if they've seen him or knows where he is, to call us. He's got two little babies.
As the attack took place, Mr. Bush was on his way to an elementary school in Florida. When informed of the first plane hitting the World Trade Center, where terrorists had struck just 8 years prior, Mr. Bush decided to go ahead with his photo opportunity.
Read this word the fast way. Get ready? Mad. Yes, mad. Get ready? Mad. Yeah. Okay, get ready to read the words on this page without making a mistake.
When the second plane hit the tower, his chief of staff entered the classroom and told Mr. Bush, the nation is under attack. Not knowing what to do, with no one telling him what to do, and no Secret Service rushing in to take him to safety, Mr. Bush just sat there and continued to read My Pet Goat with the children. Nearly 7 minutes passed with nobody doing anything. As Bush sat in that Florida classroom, was he wondering if maybe he should have shown up to work more often? Should he have held at least one meeting since taking office to discuss the threat of terrorism with his head of counterterrorism? Or maybe Mr. Bush was wondering why he had cut terrorism funding from the FBI. Or perhaps he just should have read the security briefing that was given to him on August 6, 2001, which said that Osama bin Laden was planning to attack America by hijacking airplanes. But maybe he wasn't worried about the terrorist threat because the title of the report was too vague.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
A report like that might make some men jump, but as in days past, George W. just went fishing. As the minutes went by, George Bush continued to sit in the classroom. Was he thinking, I've been hanging out with the wrong crowd? Which one of them screwed me? Was it the guy my daddy's friends delivered a lot of weapons to? Was it that group of religious fundamentalists who visited my state when I was governor? Or was it the Saudis? Damn, it was them. I think I better blame it on this guy.
What if we tell you that Russia and BRICS have decided to hit the dollar where it hurts the most? What if we tell you that Russian President Vladimir Putin and other BRICS leaders are carrying out a secret mission to gradually get the dollar ditched by all that matters? Well, for that, BRICS has to ensure that the powerhouse of the dollar no longer remains. But what is this powerhouse? What's the force that encourages everyone in the world to use only the dollar and no other currency? Well, that's the petrodollar economy, where all oil trade has to be made in dollars. That's the deal Saudi Arabia made, being the leader of the Middle East as the second biggest oil producer in the world. But guess what? BRICS has reached the Middle East and is asking it to ditch the dollar. What happens if the dollar is ditched by the Middle East for oil trade and all other forms of trade? Let's know about that in this video. Russian President Vladimir Putin once said that if the oil-producing countries in the Middle East give up using the US dollar, it will be the end for the dollar. And now he is taking practical steps to end the dollar forever. Russia, a leading member of BRICS, is urging Middle Eastern countries to stop using the US dollar for oil payments. President Vladimir Putin has strongly criticized the United States for imposing economic sanctions on Russia following its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Since the sanctions were implemented, Russia has faced significant economic difficulties as direct trade inflows have slowed. And this can happen with any country which goes against the West in any way. If a country declines to buy any Western agenda, the West will put sanctions, and these sanctions are effective due to the dollar. All assets are frozen and no trade can be done. Therefore, instead of waiting for the US to create hurdles for every country, Russia has decided to make the move. Putin has called on the Middle East to counter the US by rejecting the dollar in oil transactions. He specifically appealed to oil-producing nations, including BRICS members Egypt and the UAE, to consider this move. Putin stressed that if Middle Eastern oil producers abandon the US dollar, it could signal the end of the dollar's global dominance. He argued that the region has the leverage to challenge the dollar's status through its control of oil and gas resources. What's more, Saudi Arabia, a major oil producer and the leader of OPEC, joined BRICS, expanding chances of ditching the dollar for oil trade. Saudi Arabia is already testing using other currencies for oil trade. Perhaps soon Saudi Arabia might become the first country to officially declare it won't see the dollar anymore. And after this, all OPEC countries will follow suit. But as of now, despite BRICS efforts, Middle Eastern countries have not yet shifted to using local currencies for oil transactions. The US dollar remains the primary currency for oil and gas payments, with local currencies playing only a minor role in international trade. But this won't be the case for longer. Putin continues to press the Middle East to move away from the US dollar in oil trade, suggesting that this would be a fitting response to what he views as destabilizing US foreign policies. If the dollar is ditched, countries around the world no longer have to be bullied and follow whatever the US says. Their foreign policies will be independent, unlike now when countries have to first get secret approval from the United States. But is it realistic for the Middle East to abandon the US dollar for oil and gas trade? The answer seems doubtful. The US dollar is the standard currency for global trade settlements, providing a level of stability that local currencies cannot match. Transactions conducted in local currencies often result in losses due to their lack of security and reliability compared to the US dollar. The reality is that Middle Eastern nations heavily rely on the US dollar to support their economies. Many of their local currencies are pegged to the dollar, which helps to stabilize their economies. Severing ties with the US dollar could undermine their financial stability and lead to a decline in GDP. Thus, the notion of abandoning the dollar remains far-fetched for most countries in the Middle East. However, it does not mean it won't happen in the future. What's unrealistic is that it won't happen immediately. Rather, Middle Eastern countries will gradually create buffers so, even if the United States tries to sabotage their de-dollarization efforts, the impacts are not drastic on their economies. That's why we don't hear countries announcing their de-dollarization plans, but secretly, the mechanism to replace the dollar is always underway. But the final nail to the coffin will be when BRICS gives an alternative currency that is reliable like the US dollar. South Africa's BRICS ambassador, Anil Suklo, recently declared that the era of a US dollar-dominated world is coming to an end. He believes that the global economy is gradually transitioning to a de-dollarized system, reducing the US government's ability to use the dollar as a weapon in global markets. Suklo's remarks follow Russia's move to circumvent US sanctions by passing legislation that allows the use of digital financial assets for international trade. This means Russia no longer needs the US dollar for cross-border transactions. Suklo suggests that BRICS might adopt a similar strategy, potentially weakening the US dollar's influence after their next summit. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Africa's geopolitics, economy, and changing landscape. Let's continue now. And guess what? The United Arab Emirates is now advocating for BRICS countries to conduct oil trade in local currencies instead of the US dollar. The UAE aims to diversify its economic partnerships by exploring new payment methods for oil trade deals. The country is actively engaging with China, Russia, India, and Egypt, among others, to promote the use of local currencies in oil transactions, sidelining the US dollar. Reports indicate that the UAE is currently in talks with 15 countries to encourage local currency payments, signaling a potential shift in the financial strategies of BRICS nations. The UAE has already taken steps in this direction by initiating oil trade deals with India using local currencies. In a historic move, the UAE shipped over 1 million barrels of oil to India, with payments settled in Indian rupees instead of US dollars. Now wealthy individuals, particularly the ultra-rich, are becoming increasingly aware of the uncertain future of the US dollar. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, recently expressed his concerns about the dollar's stability, suggesting that the United States could be headed toward bankruptcy. But what if the Middle East really ditched the dollar? For that, we have to understand the dollar's dominance and the reasons behind it. In 1944, as World War II was nearing its end, Allied nations met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to create a new international monetary system aimed at ensuring post-war economic stability. The result was the Bretton Woods Agreement, which established the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency. Under this system, member states pegged their currencies to the dollar, which was tied to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. This arrangement brought much-needed stability to the global economy, with the dollar serving as the anchor around which other currencies were stabilized. The choice of the dollar as the anchor currency was logical. The United States emerged from World War II with the world's strongest economy, its industrial base untouched by the war's destruction, and a substantial portion of the world's gold reserves. This economic might, coupled with the stability offered by the gold standard, made the dollar a reliable and attractive choice for countries looking to stabilize their own currencies and engage in international trade. However, the dollar's link to gold wouldn't last forever. By the late 1960s, the U.S. faced significant economic challenges, including rising inflation and a growing trade deficit. These pressures led to the Nixon administration's 1971 decision to abandon the gold standard, an event known as the Nixon shock. This move decoupled the dollar from gold, allowing it to float freely against other currencies. The sudden shift away from the gold standard created uncertainty in the global economy. Countries with significant dollar reserves, such as Saudi Arabia, were worried about the potential devaluation of their assets. For Saudi Arabia, which had priced its oil exports in dollars since a 1945 agreement guaranteeing U.S. access to Saudi oil in exchange for security guarantees, this was a pressing issue. To address the instability caused by the Nixon shock, Saudi Arabia collaborated closely with the United States to bolster demand for the dollar. The Saudi government continued to price its oil in dollars and played a crucial role in persuading other OPEC members to do the same. By tying the dollar's value to oil, a commodity vital to the global economy, rather than gold, the U.S. maintained the dollar's dominance in international markets. Since the 1970s, the U.S. dollar, now a free-floating currency, has continued to serve as the world's primary reserve currency. Its dominance extends beyond oil to include international trade, banking, and a significant portion of global financial transactions. Despite occasional challenges, such as the global financial crisis of 2008, the dollar has remained the cornerstone of the international monetary system. Its role as the world's primary reserve currency has provided the United States with significant economic leverage and contributed to the stability of global financial markets. However, the dollar is a global currency only because Saudi Arabia and OPEC members are trading oil using the dollar. If they stopped doing so, it would be over. The dollar will be just an ordinary currency that will be only used in the United States. That's why Putin and BRICS have directly called the Middle East to ditch trading oil in dollars. Isn't it true that the only reason why the dollar is a global currency is because of its usage in the oil trade? Do you think the leaders from the Middle East will no longer side with the United States and be a part of the new world order shaped by BRICS?
All right, let's cut the crap and get straight to the point. What happens when disaster strikes and FEMA comes knocking on your door? Here's the deal. FEMA agents have the authority to demand entry into your home and inspect your food, water, and other supplies. They don't give a damn about your well-being. They just want to take what you've prepared for yourself and your family. Now, the big question is, How do you protect your stockpile from these agents? You need to know your rights and be prepared to stand your ground. Forget the niceties, this is about survival. When FEMA comes calling, you need to be ready to defend what you've worked hard to put aside for a crisis. It's important to understand that FEMA's actions during emergencies can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, they are tasked with providing essential aid and resources to those affected by disasters. However, their heavy-handed approach and perceived disregard for individual rights have led many to view them with suspicion and distrust. This is where knowing your rights becomes crucial. While FEMA agents may have the authority to inspect your home, they cannot simply barge in without your consent. You have the right to refuse entry unless they have a valid warrant or exigent circumstances that justify immediate action. Stand your ground, but do so firmly and respectfully, as confrontation with government officials can have serious consequences. It's also important to consider the broader context of FEMA's role and the reasons for its creation. FEMA was established in 1979 by President Carter to centralize the government's approach to emergencies, as the previous system of over 100 different agencies dealing with disasters was a disorganized mess. The goal was to streamline disaster response and ensure a more coordinated and effective effort. However, over the years, FEMA has faced its fair share of criticism and controversies. From the slow and ineffective response to Hurricane Katrina to the ongoing concerns about the agency's handling of emergency supplies and resources, FEMA's reputation has taken a hit. This has only fueled the suspicion and mistrust that many Americans have towards the agency. Ultimately, this is a serious situation that requires careful consideration and preparation. No sugarcoating, no beating around the bush. When disaster strikes and FEMA comes calling, you need to be ready to defend your rights and protect what you've worked hard to put aside for a crisis. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and be prepared to stand your ground, but always with a level head and a respect for the law. When disaster strikes, the public often looks to the government's Emergency Response Agency, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to manage the chaos and aid in the recovery process. The idea behind FEMA's creation was to make disaster response more effective and coordinated. By having a single agency in charge of coordinating the various federal, state, and local resources needed to respond to crises. However, the reality of FEMA's performance during disasters is often quite different from what you might expect from the government's designated emergency response organization. Numerous reports have documented FEMA's failures and inadequacies in the face of major disasters, such as its much-criticized response to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. In the aftermath of a catastrophic event, the situation can quickly turn dire. Emergency services become overwhelmed, and suddenly, a FEMA representative accompanied by law enforcement shows up at your door. Instead of offering the much-needed assistance, they demand to enter your home and inspect your stockpile of food, water, and other essential supplies. This unexpected and heavy-handed approach by FEMA representatives feels like an invasion of your privacy and personal rights. You're left wondering why the very organization tasked with providing aid and support to disaster-stricken communities is now seeking to take away your own personal resources, which you may have painstakingly accumulated in preparation for such an emergency. The reason for this unexpected turn of events is the declaration of martial law by the government. Martial law is a drastic measure that grants the government extraordinary powers during times of crisis, often at the expense of individual rights and freedoms. When martial law is enacted, the military steps in to restore order and ensure public safety, even if it means overriding the regular laws and civil liberties that citizens are accustomed to. This means that your familiar rights and freedoms, such as the right to privacy, the right to free movement, and the right to own and use your own property, can vanish in an instant. The government, through the military, now has the authority to dictate how you live your life, where you can go, and what resources you are allowed to possess, all in the name of preserving public order and security. The implementation of martial law during a disaster can be a deeply unsettling and disorienting experience for the affected population, as they find themselves suddenly thrust into a situation where the normal rules and protections they once took for granted no longer apply. This can further exacerbate the already chaotic and stressful conditions caused by the disaster itself, leaving individuals feeling powerless and uncertain about their future. When martial law is declared, the government is granted sweeping powers that override the usual rights and protections of the citizens. This sudden and dramatic shift in the balance of power can have far-reaching consequences for the everyday lives of the people. Under martial law, the government can enter private property without any legal barriers and confiscate whatever resources they deem essential for the emergency response. This includes seizing food, water, medical supplies, and even personal belongings all in the name of restoring stability and order. This effectively resets the foundations of society, stripping away the fundamental rights and freedoms that individuals have come to expect, such as the freedom of speech, the right to privacy, and the sanctity of private property. The primary objective of the government during a martial law scenario is to exert tight, centralized control over the entire population. They will restrict the movements of citizens, dictating where and when they are allowed to go, and may even impose travel bans in certain areas. The flow of information will also be tightly regulated, with the government censoring speech, media, and any form of dissent or propaganda that could potentially disrupt the calm facade they are trying to maintain. Furthermore, the government may attempt to disarm the public during these crises, confiscating firearms from lawful owners. This is a controversial move that sparks debates around individual rights and public safety. The government may also seek to control access to essential supplies like food, water, and medication, making the population dependent on the state and further solidifying their grip on power. This comprehensive approach to asserting absolute authority during times of crisis or civil unrest is a fundamental shift in the balance of power between the government and the people. The normal freedoms and protections that citizens have come to expect are put on hold, replaced by the government's unwavering control and the suspension of basic rights. The implications of such a drastic measure can be far-reaching and long-lasting, with the potential to profoundly impact the fabric of society itself. Individuals and communities must adapt to secure their well-being in the face of unpredictable challenges and potential crises. Agencies like the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, could significantly reduce personal freedoms and self-sufficiency, as their primary objective would be to maintain public order and ensure the safety of the masses. This centralized control could come at the expense of individual liberties and the ability to independently provide for one's own needs. In such a scenario, securing your own stockpile of essential supplies becomes a crucial strategy for survival and resilience. Concealing your resources through the creation of hidden rooms or secret compartments can help protect your access to necessities. When distribution is restricted and subjected to government oversight, this approach can provide a valuable safeguard against the possibility of having your hard-earned provisions confiscated or rationed by authorities. If you want to effectively protect your resources, you must adopt a strategic mindset. Anticipate potential challenges and proactively take steps to secure your essentials. By doing so, you'll have a better chance of maintaining your independence and overall well-being during times of crisis or instability. One potential solution is to consider building a subterranean bunker in your backyard. These hidden underground structures can discreetly store your supplies, shielding them from prying eyes. Constructing such a bunker doesn't have to be an exorbitantly expensive endeavor, and I can provide you with a detailed step-by-step guide if you're interested in pursuing this option. The key to successful supply concealment is to make it as challenging as possible for FEMA or other unwanted visitors to locate your stockpile. They will likely focus their search efforts on the most obvious places, such as the kitchen, pantry, or garage. However, if your supplies are cleverly hidden, they might just overlook them, especially if the authorities are operating in a hurried or chaotic environment. As an additional layer of protection, it is advisable to spread your storage locations out, rather than consolidating everything in a single place. This approach can help reduce the risk of your entire stockpile being discovered and potentially confiscated. By diversifying the locations where you store your essential items, you can increase the chances of maintaining access to at least a portion of your resources, even if some of your hiding spots are compromised. Remember, the goal is to take proactive measures to safeguard your ability to provide for yourself and your loved ones, even in the face of potential disruptions to the normal distribution of goods and services. By implementing strategic hiding techniques and diversifying your storage locations, you can enhance your resilience and increase your chances of weathering any crisis that may arise. Having a robust emergency preparedness plan is crucial in today's uncertain world. Diversifying your backup options is key to ensuring the security of your valuable supplies. By keeping your emergency stockpile distributed across multiple locations, you can deter potential threats and maintain your hidden reserves. This multi-layered approach to preparedness can provide an added layer of protection, making it more challenging for anyone to gain full access to your entire inventory. When selecting hiding spots for your supplies, consider less obvious places like attics, basements, or even secret compartments within your home. This can help conceal your essential preparations, from food and water to firearms and other valuables. By keeping a low profile and avoiding any public display of your prepper status, you can minimize the risk of becoming a target during a crisis. It's important to stay informed about your legal rights and the protocols governing emergency situations in your area. Understanding the circumstances under which authorities may have the right to access your supplies can help you navigate potential encounters with FEMA or law enforcement. Remain calm and cooperative, but be prepared to employ discreet measures to protect your resources without escalating the situation. Surrounding yourself with a small, trusted circle of associates can also play a crucial role in your overall preparedness strategy. This can help prevent unwanted attention and prevent you from becoming the go-to resource for your community, which could quickly deplete your carefully curated supplies. By maintaining a discreet and self-sufficient approach, you can increase your chances of weathering any crisis successfully. Remember, the key to effective emergency preparedness is a comprehensive and well-executed plan that prioritizes the security and protection of your vital resources. By diversifying your backup options, concealing your supplies, and cultivating a network of trusted individuals, you can enhance your resilience and increase your chances of weathering any crisis that may arise. In times of major emergencies, it's essential to be prepared and protect your household. When resources are scarce and their distribution needs to be controlled, it's crucial to keep your level of preparedness discreet. Avoid drawing unnecessary attention to your household, as this could make you a target during a crisis. One key aspect of preparedness is to hide some of your emergency supplies. This ensures that your household doesn't solely rely on potentially unreliable government assistance or become overly dependent on outside sources. It's not just about avoiding the risk of seizure. It's about maintaining a sense of self-reliance and resilience in the face of adversity. It's wise to build a small, trusted network of like-minded individuals who can support and assist one another during challenging times. By sharing knowledge, resources, and strategies, you can create a stronger safety net for your community. At the same time, it's important to resist the temptation to become the go-to resource for the entire community. Maintaining a certain level of discretion will help you and your trusted network weather the storm more effectively. Remember, true preparedness is not just about stockpiling supplies. It's about developing a multifaceted approach that includes self-reliance, community collaboration, and a commitment to protecting your household and your way of life, even in the face of major emergencies.
So I'm like, no, I'm not taking a photo. We're having a conversation. Where's your manager? How are you blaming the governor? And it was, $380 later. And I was like, why am I spending $380? Everyone can walk the hell right out. The woman says, oh, he's just walking out. He didn't pay for that. I said, well, why aren't you stopping him? She goes, oh, the governor. Swear to God, true story. Oh, my mom's great. The governor lowered the threshold. There's no accountability. I said, that's just not true. She looks at me twice and then she freaks out. She calls everyone over, wants to take photos. I'm like, no, I'm not taking a photo. We're having a conversation. Where's your manager? How are you blaming the governor? And it was, $380 later. And I was like, why am I spending $380? Everyone can walk the hell right out. I'm like, no, I'm not taking a photo. We're having a conversation. Where's your manager? How are you blaming the governor? And it was, $380 later. And I was like, why am I spending $380? Everyone can walk the hell right out. The woman says, oh, he's just walking out. He didn't pay for that. I said, well, why aren't you stopping him? She goes, oh, the governor. Swear to God, true story. Oh, my mom's great. The governor lowered the threshold. There's no accountability. I said, that's just not true. She looks at me twice and then she freaks out. She calls everyone over, wants to take photos. I'm like, no, I'm not taking a photo. We're having a conversation. Where's your manager? How are you blaming the governor? And it was, $380 later. And I was like, why am I spending $380? Everyone can walk the hell right out.
Elon Musk is hitting the road to Texas, moving both the headquarters of SpaceX and his social media platform, X. Monday, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 1955 into law. The bill's author says it was written to protect kids, but what's upsetting people is the fact that it doesn't allow school districts to inform parents if their child identifies as a different gender at school. Musk took to X Tuesday, posting, "This is the final straw. Because of this law and the many others that precede it, attacking both families and companies, SpaceX will now be moving its headquarters from Hawthorne, California to Starbase, Texas." Musk says bills like AB 1955 are causing massive destruction of parental rights and putting children at risk for permanent damage.
All right, we have more changes unfolding in the Golden State. Changes that have the crazy policies coming out of California continuing, one bad policy after another, all of which seem to be based around one thing, of one single idea: control. Control what you do, handcuff you, do what we say is okay and nothing else. Well, the latest idea is completely insane. In fact, it's straight out of the WEF Great Reset Handbook. This policy was proposed by the WEF in 2023. They started rolling it out in some European countries this year, but no politician in the States dared touch this until now. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So 4 years ago, California Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled the Bullet Train. 4 or 5 years ago, a high-speed railway system. The plan, as Newsom hailed it, was to build public transportation for the 21st century, a system that would run from San Francisco to LA in under 3 hours, reaching speeds of over 200 miles an hour, modeled, by the way, after China's high-speed rail, who Gavin looks up to. But unlike China, who actually completed their project in record time, Gavin Newsom's project failed. It cost California upwards of $16 billion, and in the end, the project was scrapped. This is what the governor said 5 years ago. Watch this.
Abandoning the high-speed rail entirely means we will have wasted billions and billions of dollars with nothing but broken promises, partially fulfilled commitments, and lawsuits to show for it.
Well, 5 years later, what we're left with is 600 meters of steel framing in the Central Valley. That's it. 600 meters of railway just sitting there, not usable, useless. And $16 billion later, the state now is stuck in a $55 billion deficit, on the verge of bankruptcy. And mind you, California has the highest state income taxes in the country at 14.4%. It's got the highest sales tax in the country at 7.25%. Highest gas tax at 78 cents a mile. So why then, how is California in this position? Why, after all that money it takes from us, does the state rank third worst in the country for road quality? All that money you give them, and they're at the bottom of the list, 47th out of 50 of states for road quality. Well, it's the same reason why California spent that $16 billion to build a high-speed railway system, and they let the project implode. Incompetence and corruption. So how do they plan to get us out of this mess? I'll let you guess, folks. Even more taxes. But this time they may have gone one step too far. Gavin's new plan, the Dems' new plan to save California, is to charge drivers by the mile. Not just a gas tax, but a road tax. Every mile you drive in California will soon cost you. This isn't just an idea, by the way. This is about to get rolled out, and it gets worse. How do you think they plan to track this? How will they know how many miles you drive on California roads? How do you think? Forced GPS integration. Talk about Big Brother, folks. People always said that California would tax the air that we breathe if they could. That was the running joke. These people are relentless, and the crazy thing is they're going to get reelected. We'll look at this proposal in a second, how they plan to require all new cars sold in California to be integrated with the state. How, if this passes, all new cars sold will have GPS integrated with state headquarters and in real time, by the way, for new cars. But real quick, there was a time when the majority of Californians were civil libertarians and would never allow something like this to stand. They'd throw Gavin out of office at the snap of a finger if he was inserting himself into their private lives. But today, far too many Dems put their trust in government, believing and obeying, never questioning authority or standing up to power. The government is to be trusted, right? Even questioning the state makes you a right-wing extremist. We all saw how far they'd go during the pandemic, the state inserting themselves into virtually every aspect of our private lives, mandating when you could leave your house, who could visit you at your house, where you could go, arresting people walking on the beach, mandating the vax. And a majority of Californians just followed along. Not everybody, but the majority did. Even turning their neighbors and friends into authorities for breaking these ridiculous rules. Well, now they're leveling up, going one step further, allowing the government to literally track our every move. No warrant, no probable cause, for the simple reason that they can, and because they know that the people won't stand up against it. All of it right in line with the mandates that we saw during COVID. So check this out. Caltrans, California Department of Transportation, has an entire website just for this new plan called CaliforniaRoadCharge.com, CARoadCharge.com, explaining why they're planning to do this, how they have to do it, they say, and how it's going to work. Wait till you see this. Look at this. What is the road charge, they say? Quote, road charge is an alternative funding mechanism that allows drivers to support road and highway maintenance based on how many miles they drive instead of how many gallons of gas they use. Just like you pay your gas and electric bills based on how much of these utilities you use, a road charge, also called a mileage-based user fee, is a fair and sustainable way to fund road maintenance, preservation, and improvements for all Californians instead of paying the state's gas tax, which disproportionately impacts those who cannot afford more fuel-efficient vehicles. Everyone would pay a per-mile fee for how much they use the road, regardless of what kind of car they drive, unquote. So let me get this straight. The state of California has been on a 24/7 marketing blitz for the last 5 years, longer, to convince you to trade in your gas vehicle for an EV, even offering rebates, tax incentives if you do. That plan has thus worked so well that now too many Californians are skirting by the gas tax. They say if you drive an EV, you don't pay the gas tax, right? Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that part of the promise for buying an electric vehicle in the first place? So they hoodwink you into getting rid of your gas vehicle by playing up all the money you're going to save. Then once they accomplish their goal, they end up charging you anyways. Pretty sure a lot of people, if they knew about this in the first place, they never would have traded in their gas vehicle, right? And they write this on their website, quote, California leads the nation when it comes to driving more fuel-efficient and zero-emission cars. That's a good thing, they say. However, because these cars consume less or no gas at all, funding highway and road repairs based on a gas tax no longer works. Even if we keep increasing the gas tax with fewer Californians buying gas, the funding will eventually disappear. California needs to replace the gas tax with a funding system that supports our state's transportation future, unquote. And the scariest part about this, how they plan to track your miles. Well, if you have an older vehicle that doesn't have its GPS integrated, they're going to send you a plug-in device to upload your data to them. Quote, plug-in device. A device will be shipped to your home with instructions on how to plug it into your vehicle's OBD2 port, typically located under the steering wheel. If you choose to use GPS location data, this option will report any miles driven out of state on private roads or on tribal roads, unquote. For newer vehicles and all future cars, well, it's called vehicle telematics. Quote, vehicle telematics. This option is available for newer vehicles that have a connected vehicle account through the auto manufacturer. Tell me, folks, what do you think they plan to use this data for? Do you see them stopping with the road charge? Government has no business knowing where, when, or how you drive. This is China-level Big Brother at work. And remember, all of this because they can't afford to fix our roads. Why? How? Does every other state afford it, but California can't? Californians are forced to pay double the average state tax. It's insanity. They spend our money foolishly, get themselves into this mess, and their solution, take more money out of our pockets. Something needs to change in California. All right, that wraps up the news portion of this video. Now all right, we have more changes unfolding over at the U.S. Supreme Court. Changes that just saw a landmark ruling on Friday, forcing a major policy reversal. The reversal of a policy that's been set in stone for years. This one policy has given these left-wing governments, politicians, the leeway that they needed to turn our cities upside down, to allow homelessness, for example, to soar. And most interesting of all, the one state above the rest that's been forced into a corner by Friday's decisions, California. And the governor himself, Gavin Newsom. Gavin, you have some decisions to make. Finally, accountability may be coming to California. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So for the last decade or so, homelessness and crime have been rising around the country. West Coast cities in particular, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, San Jose even, just to name a few, have been overrun. San Francisco, once one of the most beautiful cities in the country, maybe even the world, a true gem of a city. Ask anyone who's grown up there what it was like, say, 15 years ago even, compared to today. You walk through some of these neighborhoods now and they're virtually unrecognizable, filled with homeless encampments. Once nice neighborhoods today look like you're walking through the ghettos of Afghanistan or through the filth of Mumbai, India. It's hard to imagine you can wreck a city as beautiful as San Francisco, but they have. In fact, it's gotten so bad, San Fran's been nicknamed Mini Tent City, just like Seattle was a few years before. Now, most people who hear about this problem, they wonder why. How did this happen? It's a question that has to be answered. What changed? What's different out west? Why are these West Coast cities having so much of an issue, so much of a problem? Why don't I see this, for example, in my local city, right? Well, the homelessness aspect specifically can be traced back to one decision made in 2018 by the judges of the uber-liberal Ninth Circuit Court, who okayed the idea of pitching a tent anywhere you want, on a sidewalk, a public park, in front of an elementary school. Now let me just say, in principle, I agree with this sort of idea. The last thing I want is the government telling me what I can or can't do, where I can do what I want or can't do what I want. For example, I've been traveling in the PNW for months. One of the great things about it is after driving all day, you could just pull over on a local Forest Service road, make camp, nobody bothers you. It gives you a sense of freedom, real freedom. You could pitch your tent, build a campfire, make a cup of coffee, no plan on exactly where you're headed. Now, to some people, that probably sounds awful, but if that doesn't sound awful to you, I'd recommend giving it a try. It's actually a pretty good feeling. But obviously, there's assholes out there that take advantage of this. Assholes like these left-wing politicians who have used this Ninth Circuit decision to argue that their hands are tied, that their agency's hands are tied by this ruling, that it prohibits them from stopping these massive homeless encampments that pop up. And the one politician who's now most in the crosshairs, forced into a corner after this, is California Governor Gavin Newsom. This guy single-handedly used this ruling more than anyone else, constantly. For the last 6 years, this was his go-to excuse. The reason he gave over and over and over again whenever he was asked during an interview or on a debate stage why his state has such a homeless problem. Why, Governor, does California have this problem but Florida doesn't? Why does California make up 12% of the U.S. population but 28% of U.S. homelessness? Why he just lets it happen? And he would argue how his hands are tied, how the Ninth Circuit ruled homeless encampments are untouchable. Watch.
Newsom saying, California has invested billions to address homelessness, but rulings from the bench have tied the hands of state and local governments to address this issue. The Supreme Court can now correct course and end the costly delays from lawsuits that have plagued our efforts to clear encampments and deliver services to those in need.
Well, good news, major news, in fact. The Supreme Court just took that excuse away, ruling 6-3 on a landmark decision Friday for cities to enforce bans on homeless people sleeping outdoors. This case comes from Grants Pass, Oregon. If you've never been, it's actually a pretty neat little city. I spent some time in Grants Pass recently. It's a small, nice place positioned almost at the base of this bowl, surrounded by mountains. Real pretty city, and the people of Grants Pass wanted to keep it that way after homeless encampments began popping up in their local city park, and realized Grants Pass, it's not a big city. A homeless encampment affects everyone there. Well, the city tried to block it from happening, only to be met with the ire of its liberal governor telling Grants Pass, the homeless encampments popping up, you can't touch them. You touch them, you break the law. So Grants Pass, they filed a lawsuit that made its way to the highest court in the land. And on Friday, 4 days ago, they ruled Grants Pass and every city in the country has not only the right to remove these homeless encampments, these tent cities, sweep these tent cities, but that the Ninth Circuit's ruling setting in place prohibitions on these homeless encampments, their cruel and unusual punishment ruling, that you can crumple it up and throw it away. Watch.
A landmark decision from the U.S. Supreme Court on the issue of homelessness. In a 6-3 vote, The High Court cleared the way for cities to enforce bans on homeless people sleeping outdoors when there's no shelter space. The case centered around Grants Pass. The Southern Oregon city tried to block people from sleeping and camping in public spaces, including sidewalks, streets, and city parks. On Friday, the High Court found those rules did not violate constitutional protections against cruel and unusual punishment. The decision is likely to alter how cities and states throughout the West handle homelessness.
And think about this, all those left-wing politicians, the governors of the Northwest states in Washington, Oregon, California, like Gavin Newsom, no longer have an excuse for why they support these crack dens and homeless encampments, how they let that one Ninth Circuit ruling lead to all this other bureaucratic nonsense, led to all the wasted time and taxpayer money to keep the illusion going that they want to solve the homeless problem, throwing billions of dollars away on ridiculous programs to study homelessness, study the inequity of homelessness. It's all a sham, folks. In the interim of that, while they've been lying to us, $20 billion from Gavin Newsom's office spent on this issue, studying the inequity of homelessness. $20 billion, actually $24 billion to be exact, that's unaccounted for now, by the way. If you remember, last month, the state auditor's office said California can't account for over $24 billion in taxpayer money that Gavin spent on his homeless program. $24 billion just gone. And realize California is facing a $50 billion deficit this year, meaning the state brings in less than it makes. They're $50 billion short. It can't pay the bills this year, can't keep the lights on without raising our taxes this year even more, borrowing even more. And this is what he wants to bring, by the way, to a national level. He's been groomed for the White House, folks. He's on their short list. Even after all the screw-ups and failed policies, realize California, highest homeless population in the country. That one state makes up 28% of our nation's homeless population. It's nearly doubled since he's been governor. And he's got the nerve to want to bring this nonsense to the rest of the country. He wants to expand these tent cities on a national level, saying California's homeless policy is a national model for what's to come. You can't make this up. Watch.
If there's any good news, and I'll close on this officially, state of California has seen a decline in veterans homelessness. We have a national model. What Proposition 1 did is it reinforced that model, provided more resources to advance that model, and we're very excited to get those dollars to work.
And to think Newsom's being considered seriously as Biden's replacement, help us all if that were to happen. The good news, though, is that polling shows Trump trouncing Newsom if he were to be Biden's replacement. In March, Rasmussen polled 912 swing voters. They found Trump would win in a head-to-head matchup against Newsom by, get this, 17 points. Then in February, Emerson College ran a similar poll with 1,225 registered voters. It showed Trump would win by 10 points. He'd be doing better, Newsom would, all these politicians would, if they would just tell us what they believe. If he supports homelessness, then say it. Tell California that. Be honest. Defend your policies. It's the same thing with illegal immigration. They pretend they oppose it. Joe Biden says he opposes open borders. Yet 10 million illegal migrants were just allowed to walk right across the southern border in the last 3 years. Americans see right through this crap. It's the reason why the former president is so popular. Donald Trump, he's got his faults, but you know what the guy's thinking. You know what you're getting. He says what he believes. It's refreshing. But Gavin Newsom, Tina Kotek, Oregon's governor, Jay Inslee, Washington's governor, they tell us one thing, they do something else. Well, now they're about to be called on it. Let's see what they do next.
On October 7th, up to 23 million Californians will begin to benefit from the nation's largest state tax refund, some $9.5 billion. The first round of these payments, up to $1,050, will be direct deposited to Californians, helping with rising costs from, well, the grocery store to the gas pump. We're doing our best to help offset rising costs. Visit taxrefund.ca.gov to see how much you'll get.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Marcos, can I just start with you? You testified a moment ago to Senator Butler that every child gets a Know Your Rights presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that before or after you release them to labor traffickers?
Senator, every child that comes into our care gets a Know Your Rights presentation as well as...
Have you read these New York Times reports, these stories, the series of stories the New York Times has done on the children who are in your care? Have you read them?
Yes, I have.
Have you read that children are scrubbing dishes, they are operating heavy machinery, they are delivering meals, they are harvesting coffee, they are working construction, they are working as housekeepers, they are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid, they are not going to school, they are not cared for, they are not giving meals, almost all of it illegally. Are you aware of that? That's a yes or no.
Yes.
Do the Know Your Rights presentation help them in those situations?
Senator, ORR...
That's a yes or no, I think. Do you really think that you're helping these children by releasing them to labor traffickers and, yes, sex traffickers? 85,000 children whom you have no contact with, and your answer is we gave them a presentation before we turned them over to these people who are exploiting them on a scale not seen in this country for 100 years, a century. A century. It's a disgrace in the United States of America. Let me ask you this. You did an audit, I noticed, where you gave yourself a clean bill of health. So just tell me this. Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Senator, we have a thorough vetting process.
Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Yes, we go through...
No, you do not. You do not. Have you read the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations reports on your office? There was one in 2016. There was one in 2018. There was one in 2020. There was one in 2022. Spanning administrations, what they found is you do not require sponsors to document their relationship with the child. You release them anyway. What about background checks? Do you require background checks on all adults in the household?
In cases where the child is being released to their parents, we do not require background checks. But Senator, I would
Do you
really
require
like
background checks on all adults in the household in any case?
Yes, in some cases we do.
What percentage of cases do you do background checks on the adults in the household?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Do you do home visits in all cases? You can actually see where these children are being released, whose care you're putting them in?
We do not do home visits in all cases. Senator, I'd really like the opportunity to talk about what we are doing.
I know what you're doing, and it's incredibly and totally inadequate. And we can read about it in the New York Times. Since you say you've read it, let's talk a little bit about that New York Times report if we could. Here's a quote from the April 17th installment. Again and again, veteran government staffers and outside contractors told HHS, including reports that reached the Secretary, that children appeared to be at risk. Did you warn the Secretary that children were at risk?
Senator, I'm in regular contact with the Secretary.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
Safety and well-being of children is our top priority.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
I'm not going to get into the conversations I've had.
You're here and you're under oath, and this is an oversight hearing, and we need to know what you're doing because you're manifestly not doing your job. Did you warn him that children were at risk? Do you believe that children are at risk? Let's start with that.
Yes.
Okay, did you warn the Secretary?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics of my conversation, but I would like the opportunity
Why
to
wouldn't you
talk
warn the Secretary that children were at risk?
I would like the opportunity to talk about what we
Let's
are
look at what the
doing.
Secretary said to you. The other one, James. Yeah, that one. At least 5 HHS staff members said they were pushed out after raising concerns about child safety. Mr. Becerra, the Secretary, told the ORR director, that's you, right, that if she could not increase the number of discharges, he would find someone who could. And then he went on to say that if Henry Ford had run his plants like this, he would never have become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line. Get the kids out, run them through, get them out to those sponsors, those traffickers. Why didn't you resign when he said this? Do you think that this is morally acceptable?
Senator, I joined ORR in September of 2022. I believe that was reported prior to my arrival, but I cannot speak
This is from an article this year.
I can't speak to what the Secretary
Do you think that this is acceptable to run ORR like an assembly line and to release these children to traffickers?
I can assure you we do not run ORR like an assembly line. The safety and well-being of children is our top concern. And by
Plainly
statute,
not. Plainly, it is not your top concern because you have managed to lose 85,000 of them. And the Times knows where they are, or 2/3 of them, and they're with labor traffickers. It's unbelievable. Let me just ask you this. How many kids right now, of the 430,000 approximately unaccompanied children have crossed the border under this administration? It's an astounding number. How many are you in regular contact with right now?
Senator, we have a number of different providers across the country who
But what's the
provide
number?
different-
What's the number? How many of you are you in? You said child welfare is your top concern. What's the number?
I don't have the specific number.
How can you not know? Why would you come to this hearing and not know?
Respectfully, if you would like us to provide comprehensive case management to children after they're released from our care, so we can report.
Respectfully, I would like you to do your job and not release children to human traffickers. Respectfully, that's what I would like. I'd like you not facilitate the largest child trafficking ring in American history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr.
1 mile from the U.S. border, thousands of people escaping poverty and violence in Central America find themselves trapped in the city of Mexicali.
Tonight, chaos erupting on the border, a humanitarian crisis as questions increase looking for solutions to calm the situation.
The U.S. government's hardline stance on immigration has left them stateless and homeless. They are now being targeted by a vile criminal trade, the buying and selling of human organs.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien, aquí estamos a la orden.
I've come to meet Gonzalo, who has provided refuge to over 7,000 migrants in Mexicali in the last few years.
So tell me a bit about this neighborhood. What sorts of issues have you been seeing?
Hay mucha delincuencia organizada, porque nos llega gente que fue secuestrada, violando sus derechos humanos y les han quitado un órgano por haber llegado con la ilusión del sueño americano.
How many people have you personally seen or experienced that have had their kidneys extracted?
Pues han sido unas 20 personas.
What happened to them?
Se fue un grupo, estamos hablando como de 15 personas, a cruzar. Otras personas en los cuales les invitaron soda. El paso a seguir fue que pues se durmieron. Cuando despertaron, uno de ellos me platicó que se ladea y le duele la espalda. Y ahí fue donde se sale y tenía poquito sangre, pero a la vez sintió una cortada. Entonces se sorprendió. Él le habla a su hermano y a su primo y llorando así, sin riñón, sin un riñón.
These people were just sedated and tricked and had their organs extracted.
Es el modus vivendus. No es una persona ni dos, son grupos que es una mafia fronteriza.
I knew the buying and selling of organs was happening here, but hadn't expected to find that people were also being drugged and butchered. Mexico's vile and exploitative criminal trade in human organs is fueled by a health crisis across the border in the U.S. In 2020, nearly 90,000 Americans were waiting for a kidney transplant, yet only 1 in 5 received a donor. On average, 20 U.S. citizens die every day waiting for an organ transplant. This leads some Americans to turn to the black market, but they have little idea about the human misery that lies behind the trade. After weeks of working connections in the criminal underworld, We've made contact with an organ trafficking gang who claim to work across international borders, bringing U.S. patients into Mexicali. They prey on migrants, offering them $5,000 in exchange for a kidney.
I always feel nervous about meeting someone who operates within the black market. That's always something that I get the jitters before going in. All right, let's go. It's a pit bull dog. There's three guys in masks. How big is your team?
Between 10, 15, up to 20 people. Right here, Mexicali, US, Mexicali, and right there, the people.
And they include doctors? This is part of your team?
Well, there's one doctor right here. Is the one who take the blood out and take him to the laboratory, so they give you the results that he's a compatible person.
Why do you go after the poor people to get their kidney?
It's not the poor people, because there's plenty of people from the South that came looking for the American dream and the stuff in here. They don't have jobs, they don't have nothing right here. So talk to them and offer a easy solution. Because a lot of people know that you can live with only with kidney. He's gonna get out something on his body, but he will get well. I'm not a demon, I'm just doing my job and helping people. Get some money for do that.
The organ trafficker tells me that he pays off corrupt medical staff to get lists of kidney patients in U.S. hospitals. If they're interested in his service, they have to send him a blood sample.
So your U.S. clients, going back to the U.S., because that's what I'm really curious about. So you have Arizona, California, Nevada,
and closer the Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Once the doctor and his gang has tested the sample, he scours the streets of Mexicali for homeless migrants whose blood is compatible with the American client. He lets us follow him as he preys on the most vulnerable.
As soon as I started asking him how license trading in here, Mexicali, they started throwing up. Told me the problem that he had. So that's when we started to listen. And tell him that I got his money. ¿Usted tiene, está sano, su persona es sano?
Sí.
¿Sí? ¿Todo bien?
Yo me siento bien.
¿Sabe que puede vivir sin un riñón usted, verdad?
No, yo no vendo mis cosas.
No vende sus órganos, perfecto. Está bien.
Police everywhere, huh? But is he someone you'd go after? He's kind of old.
I could go with him and tell him, because he will go to tell the other people.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. He's going to people.
Now you see how everyone's can get my information.
I see.
It's like a chain.
A few minutes later, another homeless migrant appears.
Mira, tengo una, probablemente pueda ser tu solución a tu problema de dinero. Porque, ¿sabes que puedes tú vivir sin un riñón? Tengo uno más. Puedes dar 5,000.
¿Con un riñón?
Sí. ¿Cómo ves?
Estaba de pensarse, pero sí, se ocupa.
Sí, sería bueno que lo pensaron, porque todo es sentimiento tuyo, y lo firmas y ya hacemos todo el papeleo bien. Y el dinero está aquí en efectivo. Pero solo tenemos que hacer unos exámenes para ver tu compatibilidad para la persona que tomamos el trasplante. Estoy seguro que ustedes ven, no que ustedes no ven, y tomate 19.
Sí, porque en la familia también pues sí, aquí pues ahorita está muy dura la cosa y...
Eso sería bueno. ¿Cómo tú me hablas en qué tanto tiempo?
To my left, there's rows of homeless people just laying on the street. And this guy came from that same alleyway.
People can live with one kidney, but it's a highly complicated surgery. Only the most desperate would place their life in the hands of a black market surgeon.
Organ trafficking, organ harvesting is a hideous crime. For the facilitators, this is just business. They see these people as money, you know. And because they're vulnerable, because there's nobody to defend them there, many of these people are also tricked into it. They will, even tell them, you're young, you know, your kidney will grow back, which obviously is a medical impossibility. I mean, there are so many risks involved with these illegal surgeries that are performed in places that sometimes aren't even hospitals, in places, you know, where there's no hygiene. A lot of these people may become sick. It can also be deadly. A kidney can be sold with $100,000, and then the money that the migrant, the poor people get are a tiny fraction of that. So most of the money is left with the facilitator and the surgeon. It takes a network to develop this type of organ trade. And it's almost always across borders. Because in order for a facilitator of this organ harvesting business to be successful, to make money, they need to operate between rich countries and poorer countries, or conflict areas and economies that are stable, because this is where the money is.
The trafficking gangs work with a network of corrupt doctors across Mexico. Surgeons here earn just $22,000 per year, 14 times less than doctors in the US. So some are easily lured into the trade.
So my fixer just revealed some information to me about a doctor who's been operating in the black market business for 6 years, and we are about to go meet with him. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, ¿ustedes?
So can you tell me a little bit about how you got into the clandestine part of your job?
En la medicina atendemos gente de bien, gente de la mafia, narcotraficantes.
I've interviewed people who've recruited migrants off the street to sell their organs. What do you think about that?
Nunca una gente que tenga dinero va a vender su órgano. Siempre tiene que ser una gente pobre.
Who are you operating on? Are your clients American, or what are their background?
No, son de todo el país, pero también hay extranjeros de la frontera vecina, porque obviamente el costo varía mucho de allá hacia acá, por eso.
Are the cartels involved?
Bueno, yo creo que no, pues todos los cárteles están involucrados. Pues a mí me llevaron, ahí sí, de manera forzada. Tenían a una persona, una levantada, una persona que tenían ahí secuestrada, porque debía $60,000 y querían que se les pagara con un riñón. Entonces, pues obviamente pagó con un riñón, ¿sí? Pero ahí sí, no había opción, lo teníamos que hacer. Igual puedes cobrar muy bien por esto, pero igual te obligan a hacerlo sin ningún centavo. Es un doble filo.
He claims the cartels sometimes force him to work for free, but the organ trafficking gang he mainly works for pays him highly lucrative fees.
How much money do you make?
Sí, son riñones, que es lo más frecuente. Pues menos, ¿no? Son $30,000-$40,000. Si es hígado, son $60,000-$70,000. Corazón, pues ahí ya se van a $100,000-$150,000, dependiendo, ¿no? O sea, depende de la dificultad y el riesgo del órgano.
The surgeon refuses to tell us where he gets hearts and livers from, but the implication is horrifying. One of Mexico's notorious cartels has been linked to the trade. In 2014, the Knights Templar were investigated on suspicion of kidnapping and murdering children to harvest their organs for sale. There have also been 2 horror stories about dead tourist bodies being stripped for body parts in Mexican hospitals. But the scale of organ trafficking in Mexico is largely hidden, as most of the victims can't turn to the authorities for help.
Migrants, because of their illegal status, in most cases, especially on the Mexico-US border, they have no rights. They need the money to cross the border, they need the money to survive. And they have nothing except their own bodies. There are so many people who are missing in Mexico and nobody knows nothing about their fate. From time to time, they find these fields where lots of bodies are buried, and many of these people are migrants. Many of these, bodies are burnt already or chopped to pieces. They can't really go to the police because many of the police in these areas are corrupt and they're working hand in hand with the traffickers. The migrants, being the victims, are not a priority at all for the Mexican law enforcement. There are so many other things that they're focused on, like the war on drugs. The US is trying to stop this migration from Central America via Mexico into the United States. The migrants and their lives and their health is nowhere on the list of priorities, neither in Mexico nor in the United States. So this makes them the perfect victims. They're victims that will not leave a trace.
We've discovered migrants are not the only victims. We've made contact with one trafficker who recruits directly from Mexico's prison system.
Soy intermediario entre el donador y la persona que necesita el órgano, riñón.
How do you get someone to sell their kidney from prison?
Tienen necesidad de salir y ellos tienen un recurso económico para poder salir de ahí. Entonces, te venden tu riñón, a ellos no les importa, ellos quieren salir de ahí. Así de fácil.
The trafficker claims his money can help prisoners get back on their feet once they leave. He is desperate to close his next deal.
Are you nervous? Your feet are... No?
I don't leave emotions.
You have no emotions?
No. I don't like emotions. Órale, ¿y cuándo te falta para salir de ahí? La neta, jefe, no sé, yo ya estoy en la neta, yo también ya estoy a punto de salir. ¿Ah, sí? Ya tengo 5 años, por lo que vengo yo no... De cualquier manera necesitas dinero, pues. Sí, pues, es obvio. Órale. Oye, y es que pasa esto, que ocupo que te tengo un receptor, una persona que ocupa un riñón. ¿Y qué onda? ¿Sí jalas? Pues, ¿qué te parece? $5,000. ¿Cuánto? 5,000. 5,000 si estás apto, pues, para que lo dones. ¿Cómo ves? ¿Sí? Bueno, entonces voy de visito, pues. Eso es un trato. Ok, está bien, gracias, pues, Ándale, pues, hasta luego, hermano. Que estés bien. Cuídate. Ya vi todo fácil que es. Eso fue 40 minutos. Yo, si me das 20 días, te junto 10 ahí. 10 personas.
You don't feel sad for him?
No le va a pasar nada. No le pasa nada.
What's known as transplant tourism isn't just confined to Mexico. A recent report found that organ trafficking generates an estimated $1.7 billion a year globally. There's one country where this trade happens on an industrial scale. In China, it isn't run by traffickers, but by the state.
Disturbing news just out from London. A tribunal found that some of the victims of the forced organ harvesting are detainees from the Falun Gong movement. Former Falun Gong and Uyghur Muslim inmates report they were subjected to ongoing medical checkups and blood testing.
In 2019, an international tribunal accused China of executing tens of thousands of political prisoners and selling their organs on the black market between 2000 and 2005. The organs fed a demand from wealthy foreigners from across the globe.
South Korean police say they're investigating an organized crime group that sends patients to China for organ transplants. The Chinese regime banned organ transplant tourism in 2007, but the practice continues, with people willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars to skip the long waiting list for organs in their own countries.
China claims it stopped harvesting prisoners' organs in 2015. But in 2019, the tribunal found that the constant supply of organs available in Chinese hospitals could only be coming from executions.
Makes you think of some grotesque restaurant where you go in and you pick your lobster in a tank. But these are human beings we're talking about.
Chinese surgeon Dr. Enver Tohti was a key whistleblower for the tribunal.
This photo is probably the only photo I can find as a surgeon. This is me.
Once a highly skilled surgeon, he now lives in political exile in London, earning a scant living as an Uber driver.
One day, my chief surgeon asked me, said, "Do you want to do something wild?" He said, "We are going to the execution ground." Oh, I was panicking. Why I'm going to the execution ground? Not only me, the nurse and my assistant, everybody was panicking. What are we going to do? Our job is to save people. Why we are going to go to the execution ground? You can see there are more than 10 people got shot already. And they were wearing prisoner's uniform. And the head was shaved, like mine. And then the bullet comes through here and out from here. So this part is blown away. And they briefed me. Do as quick as possible, remove the liver and 2 kidneys. Then I thought he's alive. My chief surgeon was standing to my left. Said, "Okay, cut here, through that way, go quickly." Because that kind of operation, that things in China is illegal. It is encouraged by the state. We got brainwashed from this kindergarten. So if anybody got shot because he's executed, that means he's enemy of the state.
This is large-scale illegal organ harvesting. And the targets are Uyghurs, Tibetans, Falun Gong members. These are innocent people who are killed by the communist regime. It seems that Falun Gong members, especially, were targeted, had their organs harvested because they live these clean lifestyles with no smoking, no alcohol. We know that in 2006 alone, 11,000 tourists went to China to get an organ. The fact that in China, one can receive a kidney in a matter of hours points out to the fact that China is meeting this demand very probably by killing people. We're very likely witnessing a modern-day genocide, and the international community is not even able to grasp the extent of this possible genocide, because there's a scarcity of information, because international bodies are afraid of China. So if China is not going to be accountable for their deeds, China will become even more powerful and more daring in just challenging the international law. China is like a bull that marches on the world, you know, and destroys a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, nice. Great.
Great.
Okay, got some more family. Come on in. Yeah, we got a crowd. Sure. Yeah, we got a crowd. Sure. Okay. Someone go on. Grandpa's one of the big guys.
That's nice of you to say.
No, I'm not saying.
He knows I mean it. I genuinely mean it.
That's good to hear. Girls, let's come back in with one big group shot. Come on in.
Do you know what my dad used to say? Your granddaughters have one important job. Take care of their pop. Okay, you two girls stand right in the front between your grandma and me. She's entitled. She's entitled. This is a long day. Walking. That's right, everybody. Don't tell me what you have to. All right, here we go. Here we go. That's right, everybody. Don't tell me what you have to. Now, you getting in this picture?
Right, so hold five.
Right over here. There you go. You can put it away. Pleasure to meet you.
Please looking right here.
Okay, so tell me about you.
His wife, Holly.
Hi, Holly. How are you? Now, Holly, you come over on my side. You come over this side. I want you next to me. I want you next to me. Hi, other sister. You come over this side, other sister. Come on over this side. Okay? Come on, sis. You get right in the middle of me. You go right over here. Over this way. Mom, you get right in the middle. Come on, Dad. Okay, here you go. So many beautiful girls in this room. You got one job. My father used to say, for real, keep boys away from your sister. It's a hard job keeping the boys away from your sister. Like you had a beautiful sister, you keep the boys away from your sister. That's the job. You remember what I told you last time I saw you? Do you remember what I told you? No, not smile. No date till you're 30. They're all from Arizona. Come on, you jump in here. Where do you want to live?
I want to make sure. Huh? Just these. Did you want to get Vice President for pictures?
Okay, right here. Here's the official. Now, guys, look up and send a photographer up top. Oh, there you go. Can I have one with Jess alone? Very good.
Dad's going to stand pretty close. So.
She's a lovely child. Oh, by the way, if I were young, I had Jewish parties. Nice to see you. Remember, no dates till you're 30 years old.
Perhaps his most famous hands-on moment came when he put his hands on the wife of Defense Secretary Ash Carter.
I've got a lot of thanks to give out.
Relax, don't do it when you want to go to it. Relax.
Just want you to know, I had permission to hug Lonnie. We had permission. All alone, but it's up to. By the way, he gave me permission to touch him.
That the gentlelady from Missouri, Mrs. Wagner, who is also the vice chair of our Foreign Affairs Committee and the chair of the Capital Markets Subcommittee here on Financial Services. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, on this very past anniversary of 9/11, the Biden administration announced this reckless and extremely dangerous deal with Iran, a state sponsor of terror. President Biden's decision to release $6 billion in Iranian funds is nothing short of a windfall of cash and economic relief for Tehran to use for its military and to fund terrorist proxies like, as we've spoken, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. This was a shameful payout to a regime that is responsible for countless deaths, including Americans. Less than a month later, Hamas and Iran-funded terrorist group launched the deadliest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Let's be clear about Iran's role in the Middle East. It is the world's worst state sponsor of terror, and it is bent on attacking U.S. and Israeli interests with every resource it can muster. This money should never have been released in the first place. And now the U.S. must claw it back to ensure that they cannot be used to further in efforts to further by Iran or Hamas to target Israel. Mr. Noronha, the Biden administration has mentioned a, quote, quiet understanding with Qatar regarding the $6 billion in Iranian funds exchanged in the hostage deal. What does a quiet understanding look like in practice?
It means nothing at all, because a quiet understanding has no legal basis. It does not legally prevent Qatar from distributing those funds to Iran in the future. And more importantly, in my mind, it does not prevent or discourage Iran from taking, say, Qatari or American hostages to say, okay, now you really have to turn that spigot back on. We've made this practice now of saying you can get cash for hostages. And now that that practice has been exemplified to the Iranian regime, they will use and abuse that as long as this is a possibility.
Thank you. And Mr. Goldberg, the Biden administration said that the $6 billion in accounts in Qatar could only be used for humanitarian purposes. Can you explain why that is impossible to ensure, given the fact that we all know that money is fungible?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. They also said this about the $10 billion going to Oman, the same language used by Mr. Miller at the State Department, so that's why we should take a close look at what's been spent there, too. Obviously, money is fungible, so even if they say this is all for non-sanctions goods, by the way, which is wider than what we traditionally think of as humanitarian, because there's all kinds of debts that can be paid off in that respect as budget support, even if you accept that, we also know and have documented, Mr. Noronha went through yesterday, so many times in history when Iran has filed paperwork that's fraudulent, front companies, false transactions that have gone to money laundering, that have gone to the IRGC, gone to Assad in Syria, Hulk Bank in Turkey. Remember that massive scandal still being prosecuted today? That was all based on humanitarian transactions, billions of dollars of a scheme that Iran had cooked up and nobody caught it.
Let me press on. Mr. Noronha, approximately how much money does Iran provide to Hamas each year? And would the terrorist attacks that Hamas perpetrated on October 7th have been possible without that Iranian support, including financial support?
They historically provided $100 million. During maximum pressure, they had to institute an austerity plan. They had to lay off a bunch of fighters. They were really struggling on budgets. That since 2021, that funding has increased to as much as $350 million. And my view is their strategic surprise would not have been possible.
So the sanctions were working when we had forced them into their austerity plan, so they could not, in fact, fund these terrorist proxies to the extent that they are currently. One other question, because it just rubs me wrong, Mr. Goldberg. Why was the foreign minister of Iran, why does he have a visa to be in New York City right now? I was reading about it earlier today. It's absolutely unbelievable to me that this man who was working on plotting with Hamas an attack against Israel has been given a visa and is currently, this foreign minister is in New York City, sir.
Completely shameful, ma'am. There are Americans held hostage. Iran is complicit. There are Americans dead. This man should not be in the country.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated. The fact is, you can't look at that television and say, nothing happened on the 6th. I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated. The fact is, you can't look at that television and say, nothing happened on the 6th. If you want a nominee who will bring this party together, who'll run a progressive, positive campaign and turn this primary from a campaign that's about negative attacks into one about what we're for, because we cannot get reelected. We cannot win this reelection. Excuse me, we can only reelect Donald Trump.
Her sources are reporting, yes, the shooter has been shot. Okay, let's get back to the top of the feed here and see if there's anything new that has broken. 70 new posts already. Let's go. Okay. Okay, so that is apparently the shooter that we are witnessing there. That was the footage of the shooter. Okay, so I'm not sure what this is. If this is a joke. Butler police confirms the arrest of Mark Violets, identified as the shooter, known Antifa extremist. Before the attack, he uploaded a video claiming justice was coming. I don't know. I don't know if why would they? It doesn't make sense. If the shooter is supposedly dead, how can there be an arrest? So this is what there's a conflict here that doesn't make any sense. Okay, so let's see if we can just go ahead and maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into this Mark Violets and see what we can come up with. Let's see. Yeah, Mark Violets. I'm just getting pictures of this. Let's try this again. I'm going to search for Mark Violets and see if there's any more information related to this individual. Okay. Okay, so now they're saying he died when fire was returned on him. Shooter is dead. They're saying he can't hit a target because the target is blessed by God and had angels watching over him. God bless him. Okay. So again, here we have this. Doesn't make sense. Arrested. He's not arrested. He's deceased. So here we have. This is the alleged shooter now of Trump. He uploaded a video on YouTube before the attack claiming justice was coming. Okay, well, let's find out what that YouTube video is before they take it down. Because that's what's going to happen next. You know that's going to happen next. Okay. Anyway, okay, what do you got on Discord here, Brian? Did you find something from? See if you can find that video of Violets, because let's find out more information here. Mark Violets, MarkViolets. Mark. Okay. Confirmed Butler County. One person is believed to be dead. Luke Rutkowski. Okay. Okay. All right. I don't know how to find this guy's YouTube video. Brian's looking for it right now. Maybe someone will link to it in here. Search volume for Mark Violets, 8 minutes. Why the spike at 5 a.m.? That's an interesting... Maybe that's because when he posted it, maybe he did post this video at 5 a.m. He's not new to the intelligence agency. He has routinely popped off on the radar's well-documented threats in the past. So he was a known individual in the intelligence community. Now, I don't know, again, I don't know where this YouTube video is, but we've got to find it before it gets removed, because that's what's going to happen. That thing is going to get deleted quicker than you can censor a conservative. Okay, still looking. Oh, is this it? Okay, so this is an old video of him.
Lo dico chiaramente una volta per tutte. Adesso basta. Lo dico chiaramente una volta.
Okay. Still trying to find Is this it? It's in Spanish? Okay, I'm not sure what that was. We're working on it, guys. I can't pay attention to the chat right now because we're trying to figure out what exactly is going on in here. But everyone watching right now, you're on YouTube. Find this video of this guy, download it immediately. I'm sure it's gonna pop up at some point somewhere. But that's what we need, everyone. All hands on deck, searching for that right now. Wait, what is this?
Passamontagna, occhiali neri e dammi i soldi, cioè così è. Rapina armata, chi è? Passamontagna, occhiali neri e dammi i soldi, cioè così è.
Okay. I gotta get on Discord here, Brian. It's gonna ask me. It's gonna ask me to log in. I haven't opened this laptop in like 6 months. Oh my god. I've got to leave soon, and man, I got to leave, and I got to jump off this stream in about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. I'm sending it to you right now. I don't know who this is, what it's saying, what even it means. Are you going to run it through DittoDub? Okay, I don't know if we even have any credits left on DittoDub because I haven't paid that bill because we're broke here. Okay, so here is there should be some credits left. It says here, why would this guy Mark Violets? Okay, so this post is saying, why would he speak Italian? It looks like it's the Italian language. Is he Italian? There's really not much more information available. Oh yeah, so try to grab that, Brian. Let's see if we can find out anything else. Okay, so at least we have the alleged shooter's information. Let's get back up and see the latest on this guy, if there's anything there. What is this? There he is, pictured on the left. Antifa member Mark Violets, pictured on the left, posted a video claiming justice is coming. Oh, sorry. Okay, there he is. Oh, what happened? I just lost it. Wait. Now they're saying there's at least 2 people who are now deceased. Tommy Robinson reporting that. What are you seeing, Brian? Okay. Still looking. Okay, so the title of this YouTube video is Justice Was Coming. The video title, Justice Was Coming. That's all I can say right now.
What
Let's see.
platform he uploaded that to?
He uploaded it to YouTube, Brian.
Oh, okay.
Looking. Maybe it was uploaded within the last today. It's probably been deleted already. Not seeing anything here that could be remotely related. Maybe it was uploaded a week ago. Oh, my Lord.
Are you searching for the title?
Yeah, I'm just searching for whatever the title was, but I don't think that's... I can't confirm. As you can see on the screen here, it says he reportedly uploaded a video to YouTube before the attack titled Justice Was Coming. That's all we know. There's that picture I was telling you about. Okay. On the left there. Left side.
Justice is coming?
Justice was or is. Antifa caught. An Antifa member. Okay. So Butler Police confirms. So this is now confirmed that Mark Violets is identified as the shooter. So, okay. If anyone has that YouTube link, tweet it at me right now. If you have it, if you found it, I'm not sure. I can't even. This is just all too. Is America's second in command hiding a shocking family secret? Vice President Kamala Harris's call for reparations has unleashed a firestorm of controversy. But the real bombshell? Her own ancestors' ties to slavery. Tonight we expose the truth behind Harris's family tree and how it conflicts with her public stance. Plus, we'll show you the jaw-dropping campaign appearances that have everybody talking. You won't believe what we've uncovered in this next News Network exclusive, so stay tuned for my final thought. It is a game changer. Now, folks, before we dive into this explosive report, let me tell you about a crisis that's hitting Americans hard. Just like Kamala Harris' campaign is full of, let's get back to the heat that Kamala is facing. That's right, Vice President Kamala Harris is under fire for her stance on reparations, given her family's slave-holding past. A British historian dropped a bombshell revealing Harris's link to Hamilton Brown, a notorious Irish slave owner who ran Jamaican plantations and fought against abolition. This Daily Mail headline says it all. Harris' great-great-great-grandfather owned over 120 slaves and actively opposed ending the slave trade. Yet here's what the vice president had to say about reparations. Watch.
Should black people get reparations?
I think there has to be some form of reparations, and we can discuss what that is.
Should black people get reparations?
Now, if you watch it again, watch her eyes dart to the bottom. Right at the end of the clip, watch. Yeah, you see that she's like, yeah, my family owned slaves. So does that mean Kamala's got to open up her wallet? That's right. She's pushing for reparations while her own family benefited from slavery. The hypocrisy is staggering. And critics are now questioning Harris's authenticity. Listen to what Jason Whitlock recently had to say. Listen to this.
Kamala is an affront, and I don't say this but just her pretending to be a black woman. That's an affront to me. And that's not out of some racial pride of, hey, I don't want you in this group, but it's just she's piggybacking something that her family heritage has nothing to do with. Her mother's an Indian, her father was from Jamaica. She's not a part of the people that whose ancestors were slaves. This is just like a grift. She's no different than Barack Obama used it as a grift to advance his career. We got to cut this out, and we got to call this out for what it is. This is a grifter who's a Marxist, believes in equity, and has been raised in that Northern California, San Francisco, elitist, socialist, communist mindset. And just go look at San Francisco. And is that really what we want for the rest of the nation? We got to call it out.
And by the way,
yeah.
I think you can see this when, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when Kamala Harris is talking to, if she's speaking to or campaigning in front of black people, she suddenly gets like black dialect creeping into her speech. But when she's not in front of black people, not pandering to them, it's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, that's code switching or what. Do it all the time. And that's why we have to, myself, I'm a believer, all these identities that we're taking on that have nothing to do with Jesus Christ, they're all a burden. And so this black identity and people waking up every day trying to prove how black they are. And then, oh, you know how you can prove you're black? Vote for Kamala Harris. I wake up every day, and we all need to start waking up every day, those of us that are believers. I just want to prove I'm a Christian and just leave it at that. And all these other things are a distraction that are actually killing, harming us. And it's why, again, we have drag queens in schools and why we have just all the chaos. We're destroying ourselves with our idolatry.
Yep. Now, Whitlock's words you heard there cut deep, suggesting Harris is misrepresenting her heritage for political gain.
Just this week, it was reported that an illegal alien, and you just look at this, what's happening. An illegal alien, this is a magazine that I've never had. Think of this. United States. Just this week, it was reported that an illegal alien, and you just look at this, what's happening. An illegal alien, this is a magazine that I've never had. Think of this. United States. A tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Poor thing, she sighed.
Donald Trump says he's selling Bibles for $59.99. The former president released a video on Truth Social Tuesday, urging his supporters to buy the quote, "God Bless the USA Bible."
This Bible is the King James Version and also includes our founding father documents, yes, the Constitution.
The Bible is Trump's latest commercial venture as he runs for his return to the White House. Last month, he debuted Trump-branded shoes at SneakerCon for $399. These efforts all come as Trump faces a serious money crunch. His legal bills are growing as he fights 4 criminal indictments along with a series of civil charges.
Several other young entrepreneurs to come and visit with me at the White House, and we had a really very long and important conversation about the future of America. And Tyler, you represent the best of our future. Thank you for that. Thank you. And please give it up for Quavo and Megan. So it is so good to see everyone. And let me also thank our incredible members of Congress who are with us this evening. Senator Jon Ossoff, Senator Raphael Warnock, and Representative Nikema Williams. To Mayor Andre Dickens, thank you for welcoming me back to Atlanta. And thank you to the great Stacey Abrams for your extraordinary leadership. So, Georgia, it is so good to be back, and I am very clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. So let's get right down. So I'm gonna get into some business now. Okay, I'm gonna get into some business now. All right. So Georgia, as many of you know, before, and have a seat if you have a chair. As many of you know, before I was elected vice president and before I was elected a United States senator, I was an elected attorney general and an elected district attorney. And before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. So in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. example, as Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges that was scamming students. Well, Donald Trump ran a for-profit college that scammed students. As a prosecutor, I specialized in child sexual abuse cases and sexual abuse cases. Well, Trump was found liable for committing sexual abuse. And as an attorney general, I held the big Wall Street banks accountable for fraud. Donald Trump, guilty of fraud, 34 counts. So in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week. Any day of the week. Including, for example, on the issue of immigration. So I was the Attorney General of a border state. In that job, I walked underground tunnels between the United States and Mexico on that border with law enforcement officers. I went after transnational gangs, drug cartels, and human traffickers that came into our country illegally. I prosecuted them in case after case, and I won. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has been talking a big game about securing our border, but he does not walk the walk. Or as my friend Quavo would say, he does not walk it like he talks it.
His former friends are just sharing who he was in one of the iterations of another one of his phony identities. The Daily Beast reported longtime trans friend of J.D. Vance, Sophia Nelson, released a trove of emails and texts from Vance in which Vance trashed Donald Trump and the late Justice Scalia, said he hated cops, and said his wife had no ideological chops. A direct quote from Shady Vance, now as Donald, which was now unearthed as Shady Vance changed his personality. Back in 2014, Shady Vance said, and this is a quote, "I hate cops," is what he said. Vance's longtime and by the way, today, Donald Trump and Shady Vance are saying that they would give absolute immunity to cops no matter what it is that they do. They engage in crimes, doesn't matter. They would get absolute immunity from any criminal conduct at all whatsoever, no accountability. That's what Donald Trump said. And you go, oh, they couldn't possibly say that. Let me just show you. Here, play the tape.
That we're going to give immunity to police so they can do their job. I'm giving federal immunity to police officers so they can do their job.
And by the way, look, I think that law and order is very important, okay? And, you know, I think that there is very important to support law enforcement. However, if they commit crimes, if they shoot unarmed people, if they engage in excessive force and misbehave, there needs to be accountability. What are we even talking about here? So in Donald Trump's vision for this country, to be clear, his dystopic, despicable vision is he has absolute immunity the Supreme Court gave him, and then to basically allow a Trump militia, because that's what he's really saying, he would want his own militia to go out and kill people for him. That's actually what he's articulated before the United States Supreme Court. Vance's longtime trans friend Sophia Nelson further released documents that Vance regarded Trump as a demagogue and voiced views impossible to reconcile with any Republican orthodoxy. He said Vance Backed compensation for redlining, said Justice Scalia was homophobic and a very shrill old man, and Scalia's concept of judicial minimalism was a political charade. Nelson says Vance brought her baked goods after transition-related surgery. Vance's marriage as well was to a Hindu. And so now J.D. Vance is changing again his entire personality, but Vice President Kamala Harris calling him out for it. This is a post that was unearthed from J.D. Vance 2021. Vance does not couch his hatred for women, and then calls him out right there. They put out the statement of Donald Trump's promise to end democracy as well, putting out statements over and over again, calling this out. Now, let me just show you things, because I know a lot of people may be just tuning in to this political zeitgeist. So here's what I want to show you. Number one, Donald Trump changed the words of the national anthem and replaced America's national anthem with a song by the January 6th insurrectionists. Donald Trump calls them the J6 Choir. And at all of his events, he plays the J6 Choir anthem instead of the national anthem. Again, these are some of the most violent insurrectionists who tried to kill police officers. So Donald Trump plays the song, and then he brags and lies and says more people listen to the J6 Choir than Taylor Swift. Here's Donald Trump saying that. Let's play this clip.
And they asked me whether or not I would partake and do the beautiful words, and I said yes, I would. And you saw the spirit. The spirit was incredible. And when that came out, it went to the #1 song. It was beating everybody. It beat Taylor Swift. It beat Miley Cyrus, who was #1 and 2. They were #1 and 2. We knocked them off for a long time.
What Donald Trump then also does at his speeches is he then says that this is what he was saying to President Biden. He would say, Joe, release the hostages, the J6 hostages. Release them, Joe. Here, play the clip.
What they've done, and they ought to, you know what they ought to do? They ought to release the J6 hostages. They've suffered enough. They ought to release them. I call them hostages. Some people call them prisoners. I call them hostages. Release the J6 hostages, Joe. Release them, Joe. You can do it real easy, Joe. This guy, what he's done to people. And
then what Donald Trump also says that he would do is that he would consider pardoning the Proud Boy leader, Enrique Tarrio, the racist convicted felon. That's who Donald Trump would pardon. Play this clip.
Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in jail. Now that you know what the sentence is, 22 years in jail, will you give him a pardon? Will you give other Proud Boys a pardon?
I don't know him. I never met him. I never heard of him until I started reading this stuff.
Will you pardon him?
But I want to tell you, he and other people have been treated horribly.
Will you pardon him?
In Minneapolis, I'd certainly look at it. I'd look at that, and I'd look at all the other people that have suffered, the J6 people.
And by the way, a lot of people don't know this. Before the insurrection, guess what? Enrique Tarrio, guess where he was hanging out? In the White House residence. How do we know? There are photos of it from 2020, December 2020, of Enrique Tarrio like hanging out and partying in Trump's White House. Like, how despicable can you get right there? It was before the insurrection. Okay, so that's what Donald Trump's views are there. Now, Donald Trump also gives speeches, which he does, which you heard him recently, where he said that Christians, he goes, I'm not a Christian, but I want my Christians to vote just this last time, and then you'll never have to vote again because I'll fix elections so they'll no longer be voting. What Donald Trump says. Here, play the clip.
And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
And by the way, you may say, Ben, there's no way that Donald Trump's lawyers were arguing that they could actually have the military kill people and get immunity for it. Okay. You want me to, why don't I show you the oral argument in front of the Supreme Court where Donald Trump's lawyer argued precisely that. Here, play the clip.
Ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival. That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
What if he weren't? There would be no criminal prosecution, no criminal liability for that?
Chief Justice's opinion in Marbury against Madison and our constitutional tradition and the plain language of the impeachment judgment clause all clearly presuppose that what the founders were concerned about was not.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes. There's a political process that would have to occur under the structure of our Constitution, which would require impeachment and conviction by the Senate in these exceptional cases.
So what I'm showing you here is the Donald Trump articulating fascism and the threat to democracy that he exists. And Donald Trump's response to that now is only, look, a bullet hit my ear, and therefore I took a bullet for democracy. That's what he wants to repeat over and over again. By the way, this is what his ear looks like now, to be clear. He's not even injured, just to be clear. Now, the incident was serious, undoubtedly. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, let's say undisputed serious event. We took it very serious in our coverage. How did Donald Trump respond? He sold within 24 hours before calling the widow of someone who died there, who was a Trump supporter, who refused to take President Biden's call, who called right away because her late husband hated Biden because he bought into all the Trump propaganda. What did Trump do? Well, first he called RFK to say deranged things about vaccines. Then immediately thereafter, within 24 hours, Trump started selling assassination attempt merch. Trump sold assassination edition sneakers for $299. He's sold 5,000 of them, or I'm not sure if they've even sold, to make $1.5 million off, and he turned it into a grift. That is who he is. Now, I could give you data point after data point, but that's why when Vice President Kamala Harris...
Donald Trump says he's selling Bibles for $59.99. The former president released a video on Truth Social Tuesday, urging his supporters to buy the, quote, God Bless the USA Bible.
This Bible is the King James Version and also includes our Founding Father documents, yes, the Constitution.
The Bible is Trump's latest commercial venture as he runs for his return to the White House. Last month, he debuted Trump-branded shoes at SneakerCon for $399. These efforts all come as Trump faces a serious money crunch. His legal bills are growing as he fights 4 criminal indictments along with a series of civil charges.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what 1 or 2 of your most favorite Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal.
It's kind of strange that Trump can't or won't quote a single Bible verse despite claiming that he loves the Bible, but has no problem quoting Adolf Hitler. Perhaps the evangelicals should rethink who they support.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what 1 or 2 of your most favorite Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal.
It's kind of strange that Trump can't or won't quote a single Bible verse despite claiming that he loves the Bible, but has no problem quoting Adolf Hitler. Perhaps the evangelicals should rethink who they support.
Everybody from around the world to come here, including hardened criminals, including hardened criminals, hardened criminals, hardened criminals. Everybody from around the world to come here, including hardened criminals, including hardened criminals, hardened criminals, hardened criminals. Everybody from around the world to come here, including hardened criminals, including hardened criminals, hardened criminals, hardened criminals. Everybody from around the world to come here, including hardened criminals, including hardened criminals, hardened criminals, hardened criminals.
The Trump administration says it will set up a system allowing Americans to legally access lower-cost prescription drugs from Canada. Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar made the announcement this morning. Azar, a former drug industry executive, says U.S. patients will be able to import medications safely and effectively with oversight from the FDA. The administration's move comes as the industry is facing a lot of consumer complaints about rising drug prices.
Too many have already died from counterfeit drugs.
This new ad claims prescription drugs in Florida could become dangerous for all of us if lawmakers approve a bill allowing Canada to import drugs into our pharmacies.
The ad urges you to call your senator and speak out against Senate Bill 1528. Tonight, NBC2 chief political correspondent Dave Elias finds out who's behind the bill, and he's putting it to the truth test. Dave.
Yeah, this ad is paid for by the Partnership for Safe Medicines. Now, they're made up of major drug companies, many of whom conduct research and even make prescription drugs. Their message, though, is clear. They don't want Canadian drugs being bought here, and here's why.
Expensive prescription drugs, this fast-acting insulin, a must for many.
Well, it's very expensive. Just this one part of this right here was $529. And last month, I think for my wife, I paid $900 and something for her insulin.
Humalog can be bought in Canada for as little as $35.
Canada is a country where it's made. It would, you know, that the quality would be equal to what we get in this country.
State senators are pushing a new government program that allows prescription drugs from China without FDA inspection.
It's got to be FDA approved to be on my shelves.
The fact is the FDA must approve all drugs sold in Florida pharmacies.
In the United States, we have one gatekeeper, and that gatekeeper is the FDA.
That's not what the ad would have you believe.
Too many have already died from counterfeit drugs.
We showed it to FGCU economics professor Victor Clark.
Every business really likes to have as little competition as possible. And this ad definitely makes it seem like Big Pharma in the United States wants to scare people a little bit.
In fact, the FDA estimates 40% of drugs are from countries like India, Sweden, and China.
The paper trail that is attached to every tablet that we sell,
assuring that your drugs are and will be safe.
Now, the ad also points out that counterfeit drugs, those are real, and most are sold online, and many are from China, but that has nothing to do with Florida's proposal, which, by the way, still needs federal approval as well as federal oversight. So for that reason, we're going to rate this ad false. Live in the studio, Dave Elias, NBC2.
It's been dubbed psychedelic-assisted therapy, the use of psychedelic substances coupled with intense talk therapy to treat complex mental illnesses.
Everything started feeling better and better. I felt stronger and stronger.
From tomorrow, a select number of authorised psychiatrists will be able to prescribe MDMA, aka ecstasy, and psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms. But it won't be a free-for-all.
The treatment can only be prescribed by what's called an authorised psychiatrist. They have sourced the substance, and it also has to be delivered within a hospital or an inpatient-type healthcare setting.
Psychiatrists will need to assess the suitability of each individual patient. Then, if deemed suitable, they'll need several sessions of assessments and therapy before the actual dosing session.
I was in a deep black hole. I couldn't see any way out.
For advocates like Marjane Bourgeois, who used this therapy in the Netherlands, it can be life-changing.
Almost immediately the very next day, I was thinking clearly. I could see that I'm not well, but I could see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Her own experience inspired her work as a counsellor.
I 100% recommend people to seek clinical therapy, psychotherapy after, because without that, Any partygoer will tell you that unlikely that the MDMA or psilocybin on their own will change their life the next day.
But Australia is out on a limb here. This is the first time a national government has changed the formal classification of these substances, making these psychedelic treatments this accessible. For some, there's a concern the hype is getting ahead of the research.
That's absolutely our concern. Really, we don't want patients going out trying to find this treatment on the internet somewhere.
And with costs expected to reach up to $30,000 per course of treatment, there's also serious issues around equity in accessibility.
I'm pretty sure that for people who haven't worked or haven't been able to work, it's going to be really expensive to access those treatments on their own.
So is psychedelic-assisted therapy a magic pill for Australia's mental health crisis, or a recipe for a bad trip?
At least 2 companies in British Columbia, Canada, say that they have received exemptions from the federal government allowing them to produce and distribute cocaine, heroin, MDMA, and/or magic mushrooms. But it's unclear under what circumstances the companies would be able to sell those drugs, and the British Columbian Premier David Eby said that he was, quote, astonished to hear the announcement. Now on Thursday, Sunshine Earth Labs, which is a psychedelics manufacturer, announced that Health Canada, a federal government agency, is allowing the company to legally produce and distribute the cocoa leaf and cocaine, MDMA, opium, morphine, heroin, and psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in shrooms. The company said it plans to, quote, bring a safer supply of drugs to the global market. Meanwhile, cannabis extractions company Adstrata announced it's now legally allowed to both produce and distribute psilocybin and cocaine.
Royals. As it's currently LGBT History Month, I thought I would commemorate this month by releasing a relevant video. If you've seen any of my previous content, specifically these videos, you'll know that I don't shy away from royal controversy, even though I am the shy historian. Anyway, with that awful pun out of the way, I'm perhaps going to embark on my most controversial video yet, breaking down the secret LGBT royals in the British royal family. Although the British royal family is seen to be the most nuclear, well, some of the time, of royal families out there, after doing my research and investigation into rumour, I have found several members of the British royal family who seem to bat for their own team, if you know what I mean. Now, like any video on YouTube which claims to be peddling secrets, there will not be these problematic comments rolling into my own. So I'm going to be using the word secret, not to claim that nobody knows about this information, but rather because these listed royals are not open about their sexuality, hence why they could be seen as secret LGBT royals. Now stay tuned for today's video as I'm going to be breaking down these secret LGBT royals. Let's begin. A good structure for this sort of video would be to go from the oldest, historically speaking, to the youngest, from 1900 to modern day. This timeline contains the royals we will be investigating in today's video, but to begin with, let's start at the oldest on the scale. Prince Albert Victor. This royal is perhaps the most unknown on this whole list, although his life is pretty remarkable. Prince Albert Victor was the eldest son of Edward VII of the United Kingdom, and as such, he was expected to one day be king in his own right. In his mid-20s, he was still unmarried, seemingly uninterested in women, which alarmed his grandmother, Queen Victoria. To remedy this seemingly queer behaviour, Queen Victoria introduced Albert Victor to 2 of his own cousins, Alix of Hesse and Mary of Teck. Albert Victor claimed to have fallen in love with Alix, but she was uninterested as she was already in love with someone else, Nicholas II of Russia. Mary of Teck, however, was a bit more interested. Queen Victoria advised her grandson to propose to Mary, which he did. Many at the time believed this to be a love match, but was this the case? In July 1889, when Albert Victor was 25, London's Metropolitan Police broke into a male brothel in Cleveland Street. One of the men being entertained in this brothel was Lord Arthur Somerset, who was questioned by police. During his interrogation, he claimed that Prince Albert Victor was a regular client to the brothel, arguing that the prince was ardently homosexual. Although these rumours are just indeed rumours, they shine light on how a potential king was perhaps bisexual or even gay, and as such, it would have made him the only known queer member of the British royal family at that time. Prince George, Duke of Kent. The Duke of Kent was the late Queen's uncle, as he was the younger brother of King George VI. During his marriage to Marina, Princess of Greece, the Duke of Kent's bisexuality was plain to see, and many people in royal and aristocratic circles did not attempt to disguise the prince's true sexuality. Although he had many affairs, his most notorious adventure was a ménage à trois, or more colloquially known as a threesome, between Kiki Preston, the heiress to a railroad fortune, and the son of the Argentine ambassador to the UK, Lord Mountbatten. Oh Lord, this is perhaps the most notorious example of an LGBT member of the royal family. Though he was only royal through marriage, his nephew being Prince Philip, he was undoubtedly someone worthy enough to make this list. Lord Mountbatten had a very tumultuous marriage to Edwina Mountbatten, who conducted an affair with the first Indian Prime Minister, Nehru. Although many at the time believed Lord Mountbatten to be the entirely innocent party in his marriage, after his assassination in 1979, many disgusting secrets were revealed. Lord Mountbatten wasn't only bisexual or perhaps homosexual, he was undoubtedly a pedophile. In 1948, while Mountbatten was staying in Rabat, Morocco, his chauffeur claimed that he had driven him numerous times to visit a male brothel in the city. These rumours were not the first, however, to implicate Mountbatten as an LGBT person. In 1944, the FBI was alerted to Mountbatten's preference to young boys during his role as the Supreme Allied Commander in Southeast Asia. Another driver of his, Norman Neild, claimed that Mountbatten had paid officers to procure Asian boys aged between 8 and 12 to his chambers. Interestingly, this too wasn't the first claim of homosexuality on Mountbatten. When Mountbatten was only a schoolboy, him and another coursemate, Anthony Blunt, were active participants in orgies with other boys. Lord Mountbatten was undoubtedly an LGBT royal, but unfortunately he was very notorious and very sinful. Lord Ivar Mountbatten. Fortunately, not all LGBT royals are hedonistic, and in fact, Lord Ivar Mountbatten has a very wholesome life. Ivar Mountbatten is a first cousin to the late Queen, Elizabeth II. He lived a typical life, marrying a woman in the 1960s and having 3 daughters. However, Ivar knew that he was gay. By 2010, he confirmed his separation and subsequent divorce from his wife, although both parted amicably. In 2016, Ivar confirmed that he was in a relationship with a man, and in 2018, they married. His ex-wife, at the suggestion of their daughters, walked Ivar down the aisle to marry his husband. Lord Ivar is presently the first and only out member of the royal family, but rumours are currently circulating about another member of the royal family who is perhaps already too known to many. Prince William. Yes, Prince William is in fact in many circles regarded as an LGBT royal. However, unlike the other royals listed, who are almost always homosexual or bisexual, Prince William potentially ranks as a much more discreet part of the LGBT community, if we can even call it that. Prince William, by all sources, is happily married to Catherine, although rumours circulate in aristocratic circles that Prince William has other romantic interests, but not a full-blown mistress. Interestingly, another rumour circulated in aristocratic circles regards the prince's bedroom preferences. As I do not want to be demonetised, I don't want to divulge into every aspect of Prince William's bedroom practices, but safe to say he is regarded as the Prince of... Now, being into this act does not make you a lesbian, homosexual, bisexual or trans individual, although some may indeed call it queer. And queer is a part of the LGBTQ+ community. And there we have it. All of these secret LGBT royals. I did say this was going to be a controversial what? I did say that this video would be controversial, so keep that in mind. If you disagree or even have other suggestions of who could have made this list, please comment down below. As always, I am the Shy Historian, and stay tuned for many more. How Charles and Camilla are related. So today's video does not need a lot of explanation. The title is pretty self-explanatory. Now, I covered about a year ago how Charles and Camilla are indeed related to one another. But I realised not many people actually know this. It seems to be an open secret in many royal and aristocratic circles, yet for the everyday person, the close relationship between Charles and Camilla, and I'm not talking about their marriage, seems to elude them. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down how Charles and Camilla are actually related. And to be more precise, how they are actually cousins. Let's begin. So before we actually start this video properly, there is something very bizarre I have to mention about this channel. It turns out that 95% of you guys are not subscribed, which is crazy. If I had even a half of all my viewers clicking the subscription button below, I would have 400,000 subscribers, which is a dream. So make sure you help support the channel by clicking on that subscription button below, and remember to give the video a like if you enjoy. Now, with all of that out the way, let's finally begin today's video. To fully unpack this story, we need to go back to when Charles and Camilla were born in 1948. Well, actually, we need to go even further than that, to the year 1898, before Queen Victoria passed away. Her heir and eldest son, the future Edward VII, was a cad to say the least. Seriously, he had an army of mistresses during his life. By 1898, however, he had a new mistress in his eyes, the lady Alice Keppel. Now, Alice Keppel wasn't anything new for the royal family or the aristocracy. Although the British public had no idea who she was, since the British press were banned from showing her face or even mentioning her explicitly as Edward VII's companion. By 1899, however, Alice Keppel was firmly Edward's sole mistress, and soon she found herself pregnant. This pregnancy is perhaps the most important detail of today's video, so please keep this in mind. You see, by the time Alice fell pregnant, she likely stopped having sexual relations with her own husband. After all, she wasn't around him very much at all, as she was instead with Edward VII. This makes Edward VII the likely father of Alice's new baby, named Sonia. When Sonia was born, she had a relatively short time with her unnatural father, King Edward, as he died when she was only 10 years old in 1910. Upon his death, he left Alice Keppel a considerable fortune, including a house in Italy, the same one frequented by Charles and Camilla some 80 years later. So, who is Sonia Keppel, and why does she link the fact that Charles and Camilla are cousins? You see, Sonia Keppel is the grandmother of Queen Camilla, meaning that Edward VII is highly likely the great-grandfather of Queen Camilla, meaning Camilla has secret royal blood. But let's remember, Charles II, as he is a reigning king, is a descendant of Edward VII likewise, through his marriage to Alexandra, Princess of Denmark. If we look at Charles's family tree in more detail, we can see how, through his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, through her father, George VI, and through his father, George V, that Charles is a direct descendant of Edward VII. Remember, the man who is highly likely to be Queen Camilla's great-grandfather. I'm out of breath after saying all that. My goodness me, this family is just a mess. This establishes that Charles and Camilla are in fact related, but to what extent are they related to one another? King Edward VII is Camilla's great-grandfather, and Queen Elizabeth II was also the great-grandchild of Edward VII. It's perhaps with great irony that in the 1990s, the Queen Elizabeth despised Camilla, despite both of them sharing a prestigious ancestor, Edward VII. In fact, many have claimed that the Queen knew of this fact, that Camilla was indeed her second cousin, since both shared their common great-grandfather. Because of this, there is rumour that one of the many reasons why Camilla was banned from marrying Charles is because of their close relationship. Because the Queen and Camilla were second cousins, this would make Charles, the Queen's son, a second cousin once removed to Camilla. It's very interesting that the public, at large, are not really informed of this fact. Many at present, however, would like to see a DNA test of Camilla and Edward VII to confirm the likely rumour. However, this is very unlikely to occur. After all, why would a king want to confirm that his wife is indeed his own cousin? Funnily enough, Charles and Camilla visited the villa that Edward VII bought for Alice Keppel, meaning that both undoubtedly know their ancestors' relationship, but many wonder if they too know about the likely possibility that Camilla is a great-granddaughter of Edward VII. And there we have it. A broken down, partly concise explanation of how Charles and Camilla are related, or to be more precise, how they are second cousins. Did you already know about this open secret? If so, please let me know in the comments section down below how you came across this fact. And as always, I am the Shy Historian, and stay tuned for